Hey guys, what's up? So another episode of DBAP Chat. I don't know what this is going to be. We're keeping it on YouTube for now. But anyway, I am honored to have my friend, a guy that I met on Twitter, Chris. Chris, say your last name for me before I fuck it up.
What's up, man? It's pronounced Boettcher.
Boettcher. Okay, Chris Boettcher. Chris is unique. Chris recently left his corporate job as a physical therapist to blaze his path on his own, which is exciting in itself. And it can be a little bit terrifying for most people. I've been there. I'm doing it right now as well, as people know. But Chris is unique because not only is he a doctor of physical therapy, he is also a 10-time Ironman and a Kona finisher. If people don't know that, Kona is where they host the World Championships of Ironman. So I do Ironman. Chris actually races Ironman. A big difference there, right? So without further ado, I'd like to say, Chris, what's up, man? Thank you for joining me. How's it going today, brother?
Dude, man, I'm just excited to join you here today. You and I have kind of struck up a great friendship here over the last couple months, and so it's just a pleasure to sit down with another badass and a guy that, in some ways, has kind of inspired me to take this big leap of faith here into the unknown with where I am right now. So, yeah, doing great. Enjoying this South Carolina heat, and maybe not Texas heat, but we've got plenty of it here.
Man, I don't know about that, right? I spent time in South Carolina in my life, and listen, hey, if it's hot enough to where they'll call off PT for Marine Corps boot camp, then it's probably at least comparable to what we have right here in North Texas.
Yeah, that's fair enough. A couple of a Sufferfest runs here this week, but nothing that can't make us stronger, and I know you know all about that. So, but yeah, man, it's a pleasure to be here and excited to be face to face again instead of us just tweeting bashes back and forth on Twitter.
Yeah, well, I get all my anger and frustration out on Daniel. I think I'm going to make that a point to mention that every one of these. But so one thing that really strikes me about your story, right? There's a lot to get into, but we see a lot of guys in our space that are leaving corporate jobs, right? To take on their own, whatever that path is, right? I think we all agree that right now we're in a downturn in society, and the need for men as a tribe and strong leaders has never been more, right? You're a little different because you're not walking away from a manager at Walmart position, right? You are walking away from something that, I mean, people dedicate their lives to, right? You don't accidentally fall into physical therapy. That is, I mean, and I want to talk about it. You accrued a little bit of student loan debt, spent a couple of years paying that shit off. I mean, it was six figures, if I remember correct. And now you're willing to walk away. Not, I mean, you're going to use that experience and that growth, but you're walking away from stuff that most people don't ever walk away from, man. Share with us a little bit about, that mindset. Tell me a little bit about the start, the career, and where we're at today.
Yeah, so I mean, growing up in rural Wisconsin with my three younger brothers, it was sort of, my parents didn't go to college, didn't have a lot of family members that went to college, and so it was I think in our parents' generation, that was what they were instructed to get their kids to do, and so that was always important to them. And as far as getting good grades and being heavily involved in extracurriculars, and so we just played sport after sport after sport, and in some ways we were following the path that we were given according to society. And I just never really had that strong of a calling, even like going through high school. People always ask me, where are you going to school? Where are you going to school? And so I like waited till almost the very last minute and had a high school coach that was like, have you ever considered like physical therapy? I was interested in health and science. I was pretty good at math. And so it was like, sure, that sounds good. So I still, thought I was going to be an NBA basketball player, and I was not good enough to play at a high level school. So ended up finding a Division III school that I could still play at. And, from there it was like, okay, well, I'm going to be a physical therapist. because that's kind of what, it was sort of the safety net of, it was allowed me to stay involved with sports, allowed me to continue to pursue things that I thought I was kind of interested in. And then I went through exercise physiology undergrad, and I really was actually way more interested in that stuff, the cardio respiratory kind of things and doing stress tests. But everybody was like, well, the pay is garbage, and you really need to continue to go to PT school if you actually want to be able to provide for your family. So I was like, okay, well, I'm tired of Wisconsin. I'm tired of the cold. And I was like, okay, well, this is, as a 22-year-old undergrad, I still didn't really know what I was doing, but that just felt like the only natural progression to things. And so I made the leap, went down to North Carolina area, Elon University, and continued PT school there. And, it was great for me because it opened my eyes to the world. And along that time, was able to do some traveling and just experience different people in different parts of the country. And honestly, at that point, I kind of realized there's a heck of a lot more to life than just continuing to follow what everybody tells you to do. But I was deep in it at that point. I mean, I committed 7 years of my life, and to undergrad, grad school, and you mentioned, yeah. I mean, I was upwards of 190, $200,000 of student debt at that point, and so I was in it, and I was like, you feel like you have all that invested time and energy, and this is the only thing you really know how to do. It's the only thing you've been prepared to do in your entire life. So I entered PT, and I will say that I was naive and felt like I was in a sports orthopedic clinic, and I was around a fair number of athletes, so I was still like pretty passionate about it at that point early on. And but what I didn't realize was the kind of disconnect between, but not only the financial side of it, but also just the patient care side of it. That, like, I really was not able to give any of my patients my 100%, attention at all times. And so from there, then it was like, all right, I'm seeing 2 or 3 patients at a time, and I'm doing hands-on work with one patient. I've got 2 or 3 people behind me that I'm trying to keep busy with exercise, and it was like, this is not patient care. Like, I'm helping people, but like maybe just like half-ass here. I'm doing the best I can to try to keep people busy, and hopefully they make some progress along the way. And so then I left that, and I actually got into home health, which was in some ways a breath of fresh air because it was one-on-one all the time. I could only be at one house at one time, but it was a lot sicker patients, a lot less motivated patients, and you just sort of felt like you were kicking the can down the road. And then it got significantly worse with a lot of the transitions that we're seeing now in healthcare, where we can only treat one visit a week, one visit every other week, and it just I've seen it before that it's all about profits in healthcare, and I've called it the sick care system a number of times for a reason, because that's exactly what it is. I mean, if you're in the system, you are a consumer of that system, and there's not a lot of nutritional education. The nutritional education that they're getting in most cases is garbage. It's prescription medications first, and so I'm seeing a patient that's on 20 medications, and I've got 40 minutes to see them, and it's like, where do you begin? Like, you can barely get out of the chair. We need to be able to get you to the point where you're at least safe to go from your bed to your toilet, kind of a thing, and you're on all these meds, and I'm like, there's just no way for me to accomplish what I need to accomplish here. And so one thing kind of led to another, and COVID for me was the best thing that happened to me, because I had time to reflect on, this is not what I want to do the rest of my life, and there's greater purpose to this. Taking a small step back, I found myself was married, was at the beginning of our marriage. I was still naive, and so as a result, I was able to give my wife my full attention, and felt like our relationship was strong, and we were connected. And the more disgruntled and frustrated I got with work, the more that carried over into my home life, and the disconnect that then when I brought in, we had our daughter, and then our son, and our son was born, I guess, a little bit later, kind of in the middle of the pandemic. But certainly with our daughter, where I was just my head was always someplace else and never felt like I was present, never felt like, I had done a ton of fitness stuff, which we'll get into a little bit later here. But I stepped back from that. I was just like feeling just empty and just grinding. And so then all of my attention went into how can I make as much money as I can, because that was in some ways, that became my identity because I didn't have any other purpose in work. Like I wasn't helping people the way I wanted to help them. And I was working in a home health field that, was sort of my golden handcuff where I couldn't go anywhere else in my profession and do any better financially. So that was 5 years of just kind of going through the motions. And then, like I said, COVID hit. And, my brother was a big factor in that. He's also a PT. So him and I were able to have a lot of great conversations about this and just being able to realize that there has to be more. And so we just started like pouring into ourselves. And, one thing led to another. That eventually led to Twitter and building around initially just sort of like following from a distance what guys were doing, and then realizing that like there are still people on this planet that are committed to doing bigger things and are not trying to just go through the motions and want to be the best versions of themselves. And that I did not have that locally. I had a bunch of guys who wanted to talk about sports, and I mean I love sports, but I that is just superficial bullshit to me now. Like I'll watch it for purely entertainment purposes for a couple hours here and there, and then it does not enter my brain after that. It does not affect my emotions. It does not affect the way that I feel about my family or the way that I carry about things, going forward. And I just got tired of those conversations, and I stopped even engaging in those types of relationships because it wasn't taking me anywhere. So, that led to some level of isolation until I found this Twitter space, and that's been a game changer. Being able to connect with guys like you, and I mean a host of other people that we've had on our podcast, and just that I now have conversations with regularly, who are just committed to building themselves, building their families, building their communities. And like, I mean, that's how we change this whole shitstorm of a world we live in right now, is by doing that every single day. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of it right there. I mean, there's definitely, a couple of little hurdles along the way besides that. And you talked about the what happened then in I guess 2.5 weeks ago now, where I kind of just reached a point where I told myself like enough's enough, and I've got to speak up for some of the stuff that I'm seeing. And so I did. And then there was they basically found an opportunity with some of the documentation things that there's just a pile of documentation that's a requirement for us. And so there was a discrepancy with that, and they saw that as an opportune time to dismiss me. We'll just put it that way. So and that just opened up where we are today. So
Man, that's a lot, dude. So, couple things. Let me see if I can get all this dissected, right? So, first off, one thing that sticks out to me is a lot of people, and this working in the sick care profession, a lot of people that reach that level, you're talking medical doctors, physical therapists, that becomes such a deep part of their identity that they're never willing to leave that, right? That they can't imagine it, because to walk away from that is to deny everything that they built for themselves, right? And I mean, it goes without saying, which is terrifying, because what you're saying is not uncommon, right? Anytime I speak to anyone that's in the medical care professional, they're tired of the paperwork, they're tired of the bureaucracy, they're tired of the problems. They want to care for people, but then it becomes like they're handcuffed, right? They have a complete inability to do their job. They've got to see more patients, and they have to prescribe, or they have to diagnose by prescription, right? So to leave that, man, that says a lot. But you also said something else. You said that during COVID, you started on more like a self-improvement journey. You and your brother started, who's your little brother, right?
my little big brother, yeah.
Yeah, 6'7", right? But you really started, looking at self-improvement and how to improve yourself. A lot of people, especially when they become educated, a lot of people aren't interested in that, right? So tell me some of the things you guys did that helped you grow in that way.
Yeah, so I think you're right. I think at first it was a situation where we had to realize we didn't have all the answers, and we had to be able to do a lot of self-reflection and just being honest with ourselves and looking at ourselves and saying like these behaviors, these emotions, and these thoughts that I continue to tell myself, they're not true. Whether that was self doubt, whether that was just telling myself that this is as good as it's going to get because of the education side of it, that like I can't start over now because I have a family. And I got to the point where, it needed to change, and it required action. And I say that a lot, is that even the self education that we did, nothing changed because of that self education. Eventually, we needed to take a step into action to be able to put that stuff to work, to build. And just, for us, it was like, okay, it was really the podcast. Is like we committed, like this could literally be, my Brett and I just being on the mic, talking to each other, nobody listening, but it felt like the actionable step that we needed to take, because it created that self belief. It created a sounding board, if you will, for us to be able to take our thoughts and organize those thoughts, and then be able to just build from that. And then again, that opened up the door to networks and being able to talk to people, and it just builds your self belief. And I think that's where all of it starts. Whether it was the rat race of life or isolation because of a lack of brotherhood, like we just have to restore our self belief. And for me, that's tied into in my faith, and just being able to take actions on a consistent basis to build yourself up. So like a perfect example of that is like I told myself I'm not a morning person. I'm not a morning person. And so like I'd put the kids to bed, and then my wife would, go to sleep like a normal human being at a normal time. And I would sit up and I would just watch sports, and I would do all my documentation until, 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. And then I'd use that as my excuse of why I couldn't get out of bed in the morning. And then I just told myself like, no, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so I just started getting up in the morning, and even if that was to just like clean up my documentation. Now, my documentation got a hell of a lot more efficient when I wasn't staring at a baseball game in the background. And, so what took me 2.5 hours, I could knock out in 40 minutes. And then it's like, okay, what if I can get up a little bit earlier, knock that out, and have an hour to myself? So then it was, okay, I'm going to do a little bit of flexibility. I got into some like Wim Hof breath work, and got into some journaling. And so it was 45 minutes after that stuff of like just me time. And I had time to be with my thoughts, and I had time to figure out who I was and kind of reconnect with myself. And I wasn't filling my headspace with everybody else's ideas and everybody else's emotions or triggers. And, we see that all day. We're just run by feelings, and, that's a whole nother conversation right there. But, that was the starting point. And then being able to take that and, okay, like I need to refocus my nutrition. Like I've never had issues with like substance abuse or anything like that, but like I've always felt like it was okay to just have a beer here and there, and it just wasn't really necessary. And I realized it wasn't really serving me. So I was like, okay, what if I just like stop? And then I stopped for a couple months, and then when I'd have one, it was like this one beer now makes me feel terrible. So, I can only imagine what was happening when I was, drinking 6 or 7 of them on a Saturday. So, that was a step. And then it was like, okay, can I be consistent with my protein intake? And so then it was like every meal I'm now focusing on, trying to hit a specific range for my protein intake. And then a couple supplements here and there. And it was sort of like one thing snowballed into another. And like, I didn't change my life in a week. I took a step, and it's amazing how that little bit of self-belief that one action takes, you're kind of searching for the next one. And you realize that this is serving you now, and that builds your confidence. It builds your belief. I found that even in our podcast, like I don't even want to go back and listen to the first like 10 of them because I'm sure there was like this trembling in our voices, like we don't know what we're doing and it's obvious here. But as you get in front of it, you just get more and more confident, and it just again it opened up the doors as far as communication and rolling it all back to self belief. And I keep saying that, but that's it. I mean, that's at the heart of all of this right here.
Yeah, man. So it's you said something a minute ago. Um, how you have your kind of like your platitudinal friends, right? That you get together, you have some beers, you watch sports, and that's what you have in common. And then when you change, right? When you start growing, because and maybe it's because of so many people are not they're going the opposite of growing. They're dying, right? When you start growing, it seems exponential, right? And you're drinking the Kool-Aid, you know you're on a fool's errand about all that. We've all heard that, right? But it is refreshing to be able to find people in Twitter, and I think that's the power of Twitter. We all know the negatives of social media, right? You sit and you believe that all your friends only eat the finest meals. They all stay in Four Seasons every day. They're on the most beautiful beaches. They're traveling around the world while you're sitting at home busting your ass working with a bunch of fucking debt you can't pay, right? Um, Now, another thing you said that, man, for me, you probably see me grab my pen. Um, we talk about taking massive action all the time, right? And that looks different in a lot of different ways to a lot of different people. Now, telling your boss to go fuck himself like I did, saying, you know what, I'm done, that was pretty massive. I'll give myself credit for that, right? But more importantly, you talked about a lot of small steps, right? You started waking up early, right? And then you said, okay, I'll start doing some Wim Hof breath work. And now a journal. And then it became protein and it became, time, right? Let's talk about that. Tell me, in your mind, the importance. I mean, we know the taking action, right? Let's talk a little bit about that snowball effect, right? The small steps and what that has turned into you over time.
Man, so, and I think that the timing of everything for me has just lined up perfect because I started taking probably actionable steps. Oh, I don't know. Probably right at a couple years ago is when I took the self education and actually started doing something with it. And just the as you take that first step and you commit to it, and you see it progress in your life and the way that it impacts you, you just can't help but start to question, okay, like maybe I'm onto something here. And I said self belief earlier, but yeah, it's really hard to kind of reflect on looking back that far because I feel like I've come so far since then in a way. But I just think it's hard for people. You mentioned Facebook or even on Twitter. Like there's still people that are just posting the most glorious things about them traveling the world and all that kind of stuff. And the reality is most people are struggling, and and being able to just get a win. And when you get that first win, okay, how can I get my next one? And you just start stacking one after another, and before you know it, you're not even the same person anymore. Like I can honestly say that I am not the same person I was 2 years ago. I think if you asked my wife that, if you asked the way that I interact with my children, I mean, our little girl, they just say, "Dad's fun," But like, there was a stretch in my life where I was not a fun person to be around. Like I was just angry and bitter all the time, and it's changed me. And I know that's probably not a perfect answer to your question, but I want to definitely encourage people to just start, even if you don't have any idea what the hell you're doing. If you find an idea that somebody's talked to you about or you've seen online that's worked for them, like as long as it's not something dangerous, like what I've found is there are very few like actionable steps towards health mindset online that can like really hurt you. So and some of this stuff is not going to work for everybody. It maybe not their personality doesn't fit them, but just trying something. And if it's something that is resonating with a bunch of other people and they're like, yeah, I've done this works for me, like give it a shot. And for like I said, me, breath work, journaling was a start, and I firmly believe that we set the foundation of our day as soon as we roll out of bed. I mean, if our first inclination is to roll over and pick up our phone and look at negative media and all the things that are going on horrible in the world, whether that's markets or murders or war or whatever, like that's your foundation for your entire day. So just being able to like rewire that into something more positive that you can be with yourself. I mean, your outlook and the way you view the world is going to be completely different. So I mean, that's just like one small thing that I firmly believe in is that morning routine and just being able to give yourself the margin in your life. And I know there's people out there working massive amounts of 12-hour days, 14-hour days, and they've got kids and they're just surviving. But like if you can create 30 minutes for yourself, I mean that can change everything. And it may even open doors to you with work, professionally, where just by you being able to commit to yourself, your mindset changes, the way you present yourself changes, and then all of a sudden you're not having to work 12 hours a day because you're able to get a promotion because they can see that you care and they can see how hard you're working, and it's not just the guy that's like head down grinding through life. You have that confidence, have the energy to be able to just like pour into people, and they're gonna pour that energy right back into you.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, and I agree with you 100%, man. The power of getting up early in the morning and setting that foundation, just that's a huge, huge win. I think most people wake up, and from the moment they wake up, they're in a reactive state, right? They're only responding to what's happening, right? And I feel like there's the old adage, and I may be off on it. That if you, was it maybe Abraham Lincoln or George Washington, if you give him 6 hours to cut down a tree, he's going to spend 4 hours sharpening a saw, right? I fucked that up really bad.
We'll roll with it.
Right, yeah, really, right. So, and I think there's a lot of power in that. I think that even at 15, 30, whatever you get in the morning, before the rest of the world just starts kicking your ass, right? I think there's a lot of power in that. You talked about before you said, how you were bitter, man, how you weren't fun daddy, right? You worked, you came home and you carried that fucking burden, right? You just, that misery, and you passed that on. I want to congratulate you for getting out of that, because most people, especially someone as accomplished as you are in the career that you're in, they wouldn't have that they wouldn't be able to pick that up until it was too late, right? I know divorce rate in America is through the fucking roof, but I would imagine it may be one of those things in a lot of medical where it just you can't afford to get a divorce. But man, I bet you there's a lot of unhappy people because those people are unable to walk away from that, right? They just carry it every day, and it becomes 10 drinks a night to go to sleep, wake up, throw down Adderall to get awake, right? I mean, I'm sure you see a lot of that.
Yeah, and I think it's just a lack of self-reflection in a lot of ways. People, I think men in general, we have the tendency to just like carry it, internalize it, and we think like, oh, we're just burying it in ourselves, but like it's gonna spill over into those closest to us. I mean, it just is. It may not necessarily be you like losing your shit and going off on your wife, but just the way you treat them day in and day out, and just you mentioned being reacting, like something that shouldn't trigger you will trigger you because you've just had a terrible day and you haven't had an opportunity to be able to reflect on that, kind of collect your thoughts, even something as simple as just spending 5 or 10 minutes before you get home from work and just breathing, those just little simple things to just like turn the podcast off, turn the music off, and just like breathe on the way home, because it just allows you to just like reset things. And I think just being able to have those resets and having those resources available to you, so that we all have crappy days. Like it's there again, it's just life. Like life is going to happen, and so if you can have the ability to reset and understand how to do that, and it's going to work different for everybody. And that's why I say like try different things, like try different things in the morning, and try breath work and journaling and prayer and meditation, whatever you want. Go for a walk. Like all of those things are going to resonate with people differently. But if you have those abilities, then you're not carrying it over into your life. And yeah, I think unfortunately the healthcare field has a way of sort of being that golden handcuff for people. And you feel like this is your identity. And one thing I've never felt was that my career was my identity, and maybe that's why I've been able to kind of escape it. Is I just felt like there was always more, that I wanted to be me. But when I remember times in PT school where, I kind of hated hanging out with classmates. There's a group of us, but all they wanted to do is talk about stuff from PT school. And I'm like, no, like I just want to hang out and talk about something other than that. But I just saw that as it was never my identity. And so, and again, that was probably why I've been able to kind of take that step away from it. Is I never wanted to hang out that much with coworkers. I just didn't want to talk about stuff. Like work was work, and I wanted to leave it there. But it got to the point where that energy and that lack of satisfaction and purpose did carry over to my family, and I just needed to not only recognize it but do something about it. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's kind of at the heart of it right there.
Yeah, and that's across every career, man. I can tell you right now, it's funny. I've never been that guy. When I leave work, I've always, and I think that's my. If somebody asks what's your superpower, I can partition like a motherfucker, man. I walk out of work. I'm not talking about work. The last company, the job I was with the longest, like in with home sales was. I mean, they're proud of their culture, and all the people that work there talk about is work. It never fucking stops. And in my job for a long time, it was, man, I woke up in the morning, I had my sales reps calling me. I had to get on the phone with banks first thing in the morning. I had them calling me until 9 or 10 o'clock. I was on the phone with title companies and this. You couldn't turn that off. And man, and I know, I have no doubt. And I use that. I guess I justified that, like, while I was being a shitty husband and a shitty father, probably. Hey, I'm really fucking good at my job, right? We have this amazing house and we have no worries because I'm good at my fucking job. So I can kind of suck at everything else, right? But one thing I realized as I said, okay, let me step back, man. That fucking job does not define me. I'm not going to allow it to define me. I'm gonna start internally. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start working on me, right? And that led me to doing, to do it, because I'd walked away from fitness for so long. And I was like, okay, I'm not doing well. I'm not going to be around. I've got a little girl. I don't want to, I don't want to leave her before she's 5. And the place I was going, I was well on my way there. So I started focusing on me. And that led to, I had the energy. I wasn't stressed. I wasn't uptight. Now, listen, I wasn't performing like at my job like I was before, but I didn't care, right? I was still doing enough to where we were fine. But I just felt like, to your family and your loved ones and your friends and your community, your church, they deserve the best version of you. And I don't know how you feel, but I believe when all you think about is your fucking job and how you don't want to do this documentation tonight, or I don't want to talk to the bank in the morning, I think it's impossible to be the best version of yourself. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I think we kind of like, we use work as like a badge of honor for ourselves. And, oh, we worked 60, 70, 80 hours this week, and kind of pat ourselves in the back. And I just think that's stupid. I mean, I really do. I think it's just like I think it's, in some ways, it's like it allows us to not actually step up to the plate in the other roles of our life where we should be stepping up. I've often said, like, your role as provider is not the only role that you have to fill, and you can't give 300% in one area and 5% in 5 or 6 other areas, whether that's husband, parent, whatever. There's just, we all have these 10 different hats that we have to wear, and yeah, there's a balancing act with all that. But like, you can't make up for the rest of them by just grinding and trying to make as much money as you can. And yeah, I mean, that's sort of the realization that I came to, is that's all where all of my energy was going to. And it was, not only was all my energy going to, but there was zero purpose in it. I mean, it was a purposeless grind for just to fulfill that monetary, like, provider role. And I just reached a point where I was like, this can't continue like this. So
Yeah, man. So the power of purpose. I mean, the why, right? Because I'll be honest. I'm the first to admit I don't know where the fuck I'm going right now with me. I don't know, right? But I do know this. I know I've got a lot more fulfillment right now in spreading the message that I want to spread than I ever had worried about, well, I've got to be really careful what I say on social media because that could get me fired and I could lose this, multi six-figure job that I have, right? Um, so now listen, now look, a lot of people, because I always introduce you as 10-time Ironman, right? And I have a respect as an Ironman for anybody that races it, that finishes, that does fucking 10, right? Now, I want to get to that. Now, anybody that does 10 in a minute, right? But I got something first, though. I know something. You remember the first time we ever chatted?
I do. Yes, sir.
So a 10-time Ironman, after I did my first one, I remember thinking, fucking 10, that guy's got to be completely fearless. And then I chatted with you. Do you remember what you were terrified of and what I suggested?
Absolutely. I remember, and this is, again, I think all part of the process of that self-belief and just taking steps. I did not want to post a video. I was very new to Twitter, was just getting comfortable with being in front of the microphone, and ours is all audio. And I didn't want to be on video. And I just felt like the idea of recording something and watching it back was just terrifying. I don't know why, but it immediately created this like massive amount of anxiety. And so you challenged me that day you got to record something. And I did something that afternoon. And I don't even remember what I talked about. I couldn't even tell you to this day what it was, but I know that it was, for me, it wasn't about the content. It was about being able to get in front of that phone and record that and then put it out to, I don't know, there's probably 5 people that saw that video, but it definitely instilled to me that I needed to consistently be leaning into something that made me uncomfortable. And when I felt that resistance, that usually meant I was on the right track. And I feel that way till this day. Is anytime I feel some resistance, it needs to at least be looked at and usually leaned into. And usually that's kind of on the verge of when a breakthrough is going to happen.
Yeah, so it was funny. I look back at that. Now you send me videos, right? So I get a video from Chris. Motherfucker hates videos, right? But I thought that was the thing. Once I spoke to you on the phone, I was like, dude, this guy's well spoken. You're obviously intelligent, and like, man, dude, you got to go. I mean, and to me, I thought, what in the fuck are you afraid of? You're a good looking dude, man. They listen to my ugly ass. I come here, I carry on. I'm like, man, you're good in front of the video, so keep that up. Okay. Now you and I we did an Ironman, like an Ironman Zoom call. I think we had at one point 30 people on it, right?
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know, people that I'm sharing this with, they're like, hey man, this guy's a 10-time Ironman. I mean, it's funny. People are like, you're like the first one people recommended. I'm like, I'm going to talk to him. He and I talk a lot. So, tell me about that, man. How did you get started in ultra endurance sports?
Well, so I did run some track in college as well, and had a good friend of mine who he was a bit crazier than I was, but we got done with our senior year of college, and he's like, we should buy bikes. And I had about a 7-8 month window in between where I had this gap between undergrad and PT school, and so from there I went ahead and we just started riding, and we just were on our bikes all the time. And we had this pretty sweet bartending gig in the evenings where we did these like private events. So like there was not a lot of work, and we just got to like hang out and had all day to basically do whatever we wanted as far as training goes. And so then he had a good friend of his who had just finished Ironman Wisconsin the year before, and he was like, hey man, you guys want to do Louisville with me? And, we're 22 and we had just gotten bikes and did a little bit of riding, and, we were pretty fit at that point, but not Ironman level fit. And we were like, sure, why not? And so we committed to it, had no idea what we were doing. I mean, we were with that bartending gig, we had access to a pool, and we went out in this country club pool, and I'm pretty sure that anybody who was there watching us swim were like, okay, these two might think they're athletes, but they're about to drown out here, because we went down and back 50 yards and we both pop our heads up and we're like, what in the hell are we doing here?
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that moment of, he was a decathlete and I was like an 800 runner, like middle distance. And I mean, we had some engines, but in the water, it was humbling. It was like taking a golf swing when you haven't picked it up after 10 years. And yeah, so it was great because it allowed us to think. It was humbling. It humbled us to the point where we realized we've got to put this time in. And so yeah, we just fully committed, had no training plan, just whatever we had time to do, we were doing it. And so long story short, we showed up at Louisville, and this was, I guess, what, 2009, 2010, and just rolled with it and put together what was a pretty solid race for my first one. It was like 10:35, something like that. And my one of the guys I trained with, he actually finished fourth, and I had finished seventh in my age group. And so they took three spots, and he's like, I might get a spot. It might roll down to me. So we went on Monday morning, the day after, and the first place guy took his spot. Second and third weren't there. So he got a spot. And I take that back. First two guys took a spot. Third place guy didn't show up. So he rolled. He got his spot. Um, no, I screwed that up a second time. First guy took a spot. Second and third didn't show up. He took the fourth spot. Fifth and sixth weren't there. And I was like, I wasn't even going to go to this thing. I just went along because we were going to go to breakfast after that. And he like looks at me and goes, Chris, like, you're in, man. Do you want to go to Kona? And I was like, yeah, hell yeah, I do. So, I mean, and that was 6 weeks later. And yeah, I mean, the rest was kind of history. I mean, that was luck. I will say there was a definite luck piece to that whole thing. But then after that, I mean, went and just had the most amazing experience out in Kona. And like, even if you don't ever get the chance to race out there, you just got to go and watch. There's nothing like an entire island basically shutting down for one event. I mean, you go to a big city, there's always 10 different things going on. Like out there, it is Ironman weekend. You have the best, most fit people in the world just everywhere. And I joke all the time that I went out there and I've never felt like the fat kid in my life, but like it's just like just physical specimens all over the world, and it is just unreal. And just being able to pick the brain of some of these guys, and you're walking around and you're able to have conversations with the pro athletes, and things along those lines. And so anyways, had a reasonable race out there, but again, had no expectations. Like I was just out there to enjoy the experience. And then after that, it kind of laid the foundation for the next several years of my life of, okay, like what can I really accomplish with this? And really kind of committed myself and was able to successfully get out there a couple more times and break the 10-hour mark a handful of times. And yeah, it was pretty spectacular, and it's definitely a part of my life that I'll never forget. And but I will say though that it eventually got to the point where it was very self-serving, and that's eventually what led me to kind of walk away from it. Was I realized that this was becoming. I talked about it not being my identity with healthcare. That Ironman was becoming too much of my identity, and I didn't really recognize that until I got married at the very end of my racing career there, and spent the first like 6 months of our marriage like training for Kona again. And I just realized this is not how I want my marriage to be. And so I stepped away, and now it's interesting. Now I feel like my mindset is in a very different place, and my life's in a very different place. And so now, the doors are kind of opening back up again. I'm not really sure where that's going to go here for the next few years, but we'll see. One of the things that's really, really important for me is my kids have never seen me race, and I'm that probably is my driving force behind a lot of this. Is I want my kids to view dad as that superhero. Like that means everything to me. Like I want them to know dad can do incredible things, and that he can show them that they can do whatever they want, and that there's not a lot of limitations that they can have on their life.
Yeah, man, that's exciting, and you're 100% right. A couple things there. The power of being a beginner, man, it's strong. So somehow, amazingly, you grew from being able to barely swim 50 yards in a pool or 50 meters in a pool to sliding into a Kona spot. 10:35 in your first Ironman. I don't think I knew that your first one. I knew you ended up going well sub 10, but I didn't realize your first one was 10:35. Man, that's I was like looking like I'd have to put together like personal bests to get to that area right there on like all three, right? So yeah, that's pretty insane. I may drown in the water any given time. I still don't despise swimming. Um, so man, that's so hard to cry. I'm looking down. I keep looking at this number. I've got 10:35 written down. Like, what the fuck, man? No, and I hope your kids can't hear me.
They're both napping, so you're good.
Okay, good stuff, good stuff. So yeah, I get that, and you said that it becomes an identity. I think the nature of the sport kind of forces that, right? I mean, yeah, you can be on a team, you can be in a group, right? But ultimately, dude, when you're out there on that course, you're by yourself, right? Now you talked about you kind of got this fire lit. You and I have been chatting about doing a little something, right? And we've already had our Zoom call where we had 25 30 people, and some of those people, I realized who they were, and I'm like, well, they sent me a message. I was like, dude, you've never been involved in a conversation with us about, because we got the big group race in Waco, that other group's racing in Florida, a big group of people, and people are like, hey, I want to check this out, right? And I'm like, man, I had no, you don't know who you're influencing or who's watching you, right? So you and I have been chatting recently. I'll let you tell a little bit about what we're kind of bouncing around here and what we're considering.
Yeah, so you and I have definitely had this conversation here now a couple times, and I think we're in the process of organizing a little tri camp for sometime late summer, probably end of August, early September, and just being able to get a bunch of not only like-minded guys, men and women, whoever's interested, together for something where we can build together, be available. You and I have a fair bit of experience with this now, and just being able to help those people who are just still trying to kind of figure things out, go through the experience of what does a transition look like, and fueling strategies, and just being able to kind of bounce questions off of both of us, and being able to put together a pretty epic training weekend as well. Looking at probably doing this in the South Carolina area, and being able to organize just some lodging, and be able to let everybody kind of stay together. It's really important to me to not only build athletes for Ironman, but also build community and brotherhood and sisterhood, or we'll be able to continue to just like grow together. And so I think it's important to just, we can go and bust our tails for a few hours, and really, work on the physical side of it, but also just being able to kind of build each other up, and just enjoy the experience of being together for a weekend with people that are doing similar things, and trying to step outside their comfort zones. And it's difficult, like I said earlier, to do that sometimes in our local communities. And so this will create an opportunity for people to get together from all over the country who, they maybe have interacted on Twitter, but a little different when you get to spend a couple days with them, and just, view how authentic those people are, and hopefully build some lasting friendships into the future.
Yeah, man, that's it. Yeah, when you mentioned that to me, I was like, 100%, I'm in. And I'm nowhere near the caliber of triathlete that you are. And I have no illusions that I'll ever race at Kona unless I do like a all world athlete, right? I could probably do the 10th and sneak in. Man, my age group's a little competitive too, Chris. I'm going to hide behind that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I definitely think in some ways I kind of lucked out, because I did all my racing in my 20s, and the field expands greatly once you get into your 30s. And so I'm not sure. We'll see what happens here over the next couple of years, but trying to qualify in that 35, 39 range is a completely different animal. And the same thing in the 40s. It takes on you get a bunch of animals that roll into that point, and yeah, so I hear you there. I don't know, man. I still think as long as you can survive that swim, if you weren't trying to do back to back,
Yeah.
I think you might surprise yourself.
Yeah, and so that was that. See, it was the thing was I was losing motivation to just do a race for time, right? I mean, last year I was registered for Cozumel, and I started like, oh, first off, I was like, hey, I want to go sub 11 hours, like I think I can, right? Then I got, man, like into July, and I was like, hey, this bike's gotten real fucking easy for me. I was like, I can go mid fours on the bike. I know I can go sub five, but I think if everything's perfect, I can go sub four. I'll just piss on myself, right? Because I've never done that. Chris, you almost broke my damn Zoom call when you started talking about that. People were messaging me like, "Is he real?" I'm like, "Yes, he's real." No. But so like I was like, okay, let me piss on the bike, save a few minutes there. I got a shot again. I know I can go under five, right? And so then I was like, let me start focusing on the run. Well, then I ended up with COVID, and then I was like, I rushed back like a stupid ass. You and I talked about it before. I After a week of being basically in bed, I said, fuck this, not going to be a pussy anymore. I got up, I went for a run, and then the next day I had pneumonia. So yeah, I mean, sometimes don't be a pussy, but sometimes just don't be a fucking idiot too, right? I mean, I basically had complications for the next couple of months. I deferred to this year. Now, here we are. Now would be, what are we in June? I'd be 5 months out. Matter of fact, 5 months from I think yesterday to Ironman Cozumel. So I am registered for Ironman Cozumel. But then I realized, hey, they're doing two races in the same place. You know this as an Ironman racer. Logistically, it's a nightmare. Ironman by itself, to have two races in the same town on the same weekend, is damn near impossible, right? And they do it twice a year right now. They call it a festival weekend. One in my backyard. There's one in your former backyard, right? Ironman Wisconsin's the other one. And so I was like, well, that's something that really stuck out to me. When I reached out to them, I'm a member of the Ironman Foundation. When I reached out to them to say, hey, are they doing IMF races or whatever? They're like, hey, you're a veteran. Do you want to do the Gold Star Initiative? Do you want to carry the flag, right? When they asked me that, I was like, yeah. And they're like, well, which race? I said, I'm going to do it for fucking both of them, right? So not only am I racing both, I'm going to be carrying the flag for both. So I want to make this shit as hard as I possibly can, because I can't run. I don't like running with a water bottle. So now I've got to run with a broom handle. Yeah. So with drag and all that. So here's what I'm going to say. You know most of the other like 15 people that are racing, or 20 people that are racing. If I beat one of you motherfuckers on that 70.3 after running an Ironman the day before and carrying a flag, man, I may be difficult to deal with for a little bit, right? So
you're gonna make life on DT a whole lot easier for a little while.
He can't. This motherfucker better. Yeah, he better be out riding his bike right now. He better be running. He better get his ass in that pool. So, and he better hope I drown. So, no, man, no, that's great stuff. So I'm excited to do to have our camp. We'll hash that out and share details of that as we go. You talked a little bit earlier about doing the podcast with your brother. Now, I don't know a lot. I mean, I assume just from listening to your podcast, I've been on your podcast, I assume you guys are close. Tell me how that dynamic's improved over the last couple, since you guys started that.
Yeah, so it's interesting. He's the youngest, I'm the oldest, so we've had, I would say, growing up, it was sort of a situation where we there was 6 years between us, so like he was whatever, seventh grade when I was a senior, and how, as far as brothers go, especially being the older brother, you just didn't really want your little brother hanging around, so we didn't really have that much of a relationship outside of sports. Just we were both very heavily into basketball, so even when I was playing in high school and he was there, like I would support him with that, but there definitely wasn't a level of closeness in our family. And it took a while. I mean, it really didn't start back up, I would say, until he finished up PT school, and we were able to. I think I had been in kind of the thick of things at that point, and he was just starting to see what the real world was like, and that allowed us to kind of get into some of these conversations and start to kind of build each other up and create that true brotherhood, so to speak, of, okay, like there's an open level of communication here. We now both have in some ways become a bit more mature, and we can have some conversations about things that previously we probably weren't comfortable talking about. And yeah, and then as the frustrations with some of these other things, education and healthcare and financial world and all that kind of stuff, we sort of found common ground there, and we're able to kind of use our frustrations to turn into a positive. And then it was like, okay, we have all this information. Now let's just kind of start talking about it. And now, like, I really can't imagine either one of us probably taking the steps that we did as quickly as we did without each other to be able to kind of bounce ideas off. And like, yeah, this was a personal journey for both of us for sure. And we both have kind of navigated it different ways and whatever. But to be able to kind of have that person to constantly being able to go back to and talk about things. And of course, yeah, the podcast has just been incredible because we're building a brotherhood with people at the same time in a way. And so we have common people that we connect with, like you, who, we may have deeper relationships with those people on different levels as far as one brother to the other, but at the same time, we're aware of the same group and we're able to kind of build the same tribe. And yeah, it's been awesome. I mean, I can't say that we've even come close to being where we are right now previously in life. And so I think if nothing else comes from this, I mean, that's been worthwhile. It's 100 times over in life.
Yeah, man. I think it's really cool to see that. I have a little sister, but I don't have a brother, and I always envied my friends that did have big brothers. So I have enjoyed watching you two guys. Every once in a while, you'll snipe at each other, like me and my son Daniel. Not quite to the level we do, but so he's 6'7". You're 6'2", man. I've got to know, how tall are your parents?
Average. My dad's, well, he's probably 5'10" now and shrinking by the day.
Yeah, sure.
I think he probably was 6'1" at one point in his life. My mom's, I guess you'd probably call her above average. She's like 5'7". So, but we always call Brett the mailman's kid because he just, my other two brothers are in that like 6 foot range.
Yeah.
And yeah, he just didn't stop growing, and all of a sudden now he's got to duck through doorways. So, yeah, he's a
Yeah.
bit of the mutant in the family, you could say.
Yeah, it's funny because my son Daniel's 6'6", right? You know that those two. Like I said, well, hey, us four, like Daniel and I grew up in Kentucky, opposite ends of the state. You two from Wisconsin. Man, we find a fifth scrub, right? And we can always just shoot threes, let those two idiots rebound, and we'll be good. So Brett is actually doing the Goggins challenge, correct?
Yeah, he called me out yesterday, and I'm probably going to do it with him. I'm committed to that at this point for end of August too. So I'm proud of him because he has not been a runner. Like, hated it. I mean, other than up and down the basketball court, I mean, that was the extent of his running career. I want to say he did track like 1 year in high school, and he hated it. I still remember like watching him just disgruntled go out the door to practice a couple different times, and he just, yeah. So for him to like commit to doing 48 miles, it's probably 48 miles than he did in the first 27, 28 years of his life.
Yeah, man, I tell you, I did that a couple of years ago. I did it I want to say I did it in 2020. Yeah, 2020. I'll tell you, because I've run double that distance at once, right? But I tell you, man, the stop and go, the almost being able to get to rest before you got to run again, that provides a very unique dynamic of doing. Have you done the Goggins Challenge before?
No, I almost did it last year, and just again I was kind of in a spot where it wasn't really going to work out as far as logistically for me. And it's not going to be ideal here either. We live in a very rural spot, so I'm just hoping I don't get attacked by like a black bear or a bobcat in the middle of the night. Well, I'm out there at 4 a.m., but we're gonna roll the dice.
Yeah, man, that's what's crazy. My mom lives in southeast Kentucky, in Appalachia. Now the black bears they're everywhere. We never had them growing up. We had like one, and now they're just like walking around getting in trash.
Everywhere,
Like
yeah.
yeah, they'll be hunted soon, I'm sure. Man, so yeah, so yeah, about that race, it's funny because speaking of Goggins, he talks about this. I have several friends that have been through BUD/S, Navy SEALs, Navy SEALs training, and they say in Hell Week, you hit Wednesday, you're told nonstop that, dude, that's when it gets shitty, right? So no matter how you feel like you're kicking ass on Wednesday, you're like, fuck, man, this is supposed to suck now, so you're miserable. Well, I can say this. That's the same thing people said about the midway point of the Goggins Challenge, right? And I watched a lot of people doing it while David was doing it this past year. A lot of the people in our circle were doing it. And one thing I saw was, and I saw people that were like, dude, I mean, I got to do it. The only way through is through it, right? There's no way to fucking, you got to run forward. You're going to run it every 4 hours, right? And I watched a lot of guys that had never done anything, that had never run a marathon. They had never done an Ironman. But these guys, I watched their mindset stay right. And I think it was easier for them than I would have ever expected. And I thought, I mean, that was inspiring for me to see that. Did you know, I don't know if I talk about this, that David and I were in pararescue training together?
I think you mentioned that. I think it might have been on our podcast actually.
So.
That that you really didn't know the guy until after he got big, and then you realized like that guy was in training with me.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a funny story because we've confirmed it. He was in a couple classes ahead of me, right? But he had sickle cell trait and he was washed out of training, but he was doing administrative work around the squadron when I was there. The funny thing about that was I want to say I think it was Instagram. I sent him a message. I'll find a message, and I said, "Hey man, you would have been in. They call it balls 1, balls 2, balls 3 of the class. I was balls 505 or 95, excuse me, balls 595. Yeah, I'm a lot older than that. He was balls 295." And I said, "Hey, were you balls 295, man?" I was there because I'd heard he'd mentioned some names that I knew. We had the same, Sergeant Ness, Sergeant Brannon, Sergeant we had them all, right? So we had Larkin. He mentioned those names. I was like, dude, these are the same time, same guys, right? And I put one and one together. We're the same age. And I said, "Hey, were you in this class?" He said, his response, "Roger that, stay hard." He's not the most fucking sentimental guy. So I couldn't imagine a more perfect day. I think in my mind, he's going to say, "Yeah, man, it's pretty cool, man. What's some of the guys you remember? Roger that, stay hard. Shut it down." So I remember that. So one thing I laugh about it, but so, hey, I figure when somebody sees me doing some stupid, go fucking run in 100 degrees and people message me and tell me they're inspired, I do my best. I love David, but I do my best to be a little more personable than that. Like when somebody tells me like, "Hey man, that was awesome. You inspired me." Yeah, that's what I did. I said, "Man, you inspired me. Here's what I did. I went and did Ironman after I watched you on Joe Rogan. I read your book, and then I realized, fuck, I think I know this guy." And he's like, "Roger that, stay hard. Hoorah," right? Like, okay. Thanks, David.
Just very robotic, yeah.
Good talk, right? So, well, man, look, man, I've enjoyed chatting with you. I know you got a whole day ahead. Not everybody's completely like me. Well, you kind of are. No, I'm joking. You got your kids. My kids are not with me today. But, man, I'd like to get some parting shots, man. If you've got anything to ask me, by all means, I always welcome that. But I'd like to hear some of your parting thoughts on, what's coming up for you. Some advice you'd give to somebody that feels like they're stuck, they're in a career field, that they're like, "Hey man, I got to do this. This is the expectation. If I walk away from this, people are going to think I'm fucking insane." What can you say for them? What can you say for people that want to do Ironman? The floor is yours, brother. Go.
Yeah, so I mean, I think first of all, I'm not sitting here saying go get yourself fired or go quit tomorrow. This was a process, and one thing I didn't mention is I almost lost my job back in January because of the pandemic stuff. And at that point, I told myself nobody's ever going to dictate to me my ability to provide for my family. So I was able to continue for whatever that was, 5 months before, had the other issue. But it changed my whole mindset. And I was at that point completely focused on continuing to build myself, and that I was capable of something that I previously didn't think was possible. And I'll be completely transparent. I still don't know what the next 6 months to a year are going to look like for me. And I'm at peace with that because I know that if I keep taking steps, the next step is going to be provided for me. Like I firmly believe in that. that, God gives us the ability he gives us that first step. We have to take that first step before he's going to show us the second one. And so that's what I'm trusting in right now, is just being able to continue to be consistent and disciplined, connecting with the right people, and just putting in the work every single day. So for anybody who's just struggling to take action, reach out. I'm happy. I've been getting on the phone with a lot of people over the past couple of weeks, just kind of getting some feedback and just trying to give people some starting points, as to like, okay, this is what's going on in my life, and I'm feeling empty. I'm feeling purposeless. I'm isolated. There is an opportunity for you to move forward, but you cannot stay where you are right now. And being able to just understand that all you have to do is take one action. And if you can take one actionable step, it can then snowball. We hit on that earlier, but it's the truth. You can't have life change while you're stagnant. You're going to have to step outside your comfort zone. It may require you to leave behind some of the things that people and places that you previously felt comfortable in. But that's where the magic happens. I think that's the biggest thing. And, now moving forward, one of the things that we continue, my brother and I, talk about is building tribe. And we're in the process of doing that, organizing some men's groups and being able to empower people to take those actionable steps, because it can be very daunting all on your own. Sorry, my dog decided he wanted to try to join the party here. But it can be very daunting on your own. And it's something that when you're surrounded by like-minded men, and it can be almost impossible to find in your local community. I don't necessarily love technology, but technology in this space and being able to surround yourself with the right people and the right men can change your life. And so that's an area that I'm really passionate about, is just building community. Because if we can build that self-belief together as a group, that's going to carry over into our families and into our communities. And I mean, that's how you change the world, is through families and through building men. And politics ain't getting the job done. A sick care system isn't getting the job done. It all starts, internally, and being able to just build that self-belief. So yeah, I just, encourage everybody, if you're in that spot, don't be afraid to reach out. I've got time to get on the phone and just being able to unpack that, and I would love the opportunity to just talk about that further with you.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. You said a couple of things there before we wrap it up. I want to just kind of go back over, because I want people to listen to that again. That part right there was beautiful. I always say, God does not call the qualified; He qualifies the called. Right now, with that being said, to sit around and think, if it's meant to be, it'll find a way. That is a pussy mindset. You've got to take that first step. It's on you at that point. If you're feeling called, if you're feeling moved, if you're feeling like and a lot of people feel this way. They feel that this is not why I'm here, right? I have a bigger purpose, yet they don't ever take action to figure that purpose out, right? And I'm with you, brother. I don't know. I know you don't know. I don't know what your step is for you, but I feel like it's going to be really, really, really big. So I don't know how many more people you called before you called me. I don't want to get you in trouble with your wife, because I know I knew before she did. Sorry.
You were the first guy. I'm not gonna lie. You were the first guy.
I wondered that, man, and that man, that's. I'm not speechless often, but that's one of those things, man, that touches me. But the last thing you said in that was, man, it's a process. You got to work it every single day, and and I know my friends, my family think that I'm on this freaking training vacation right now. But man, I spend so much time, in thought, and in journaling, working on me, trying to make myself the best. Obviously I'm training for my races, but coming up with, what I'm going to discuss in a given day. Usually lately it's been, don't be a pussy, right? So, but no, and I spent a lot of time on the phone, just like you, same stuff, man. I spent a lot of time just growing and putting my tribe together, man. And I'm excited for you and to watch you so far, man. And this last 2.5, 3 weeks, man, it's been a treat. And we're going to meet soon, right? So we're going to hang out and let you probably stomp me out on a mock triathlon. Yeah, I may actually put you. I mean, here's the thing, man. If I actually hit it real fucking big, right? Something happens and I get this windfall of millions or whatever. You know this. I don't want to get into it, like, because I don't. I'm not a bitch, but I may need a own staff physical therapist, right? Because I've got a fucking litany of issues going on. Well, Chris, I appreciate you taking the time on. I don't even know what today is. Wednesday, right?
Yeah, it's funny when you're working for yourself now. You feel like a retiree at times. I have to like look at the calendar myself.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. Somebody was, my debit card expired, right? And I kept been getting enough notification like, you need to update this fucking thing, right, on my AT&T account. And I was like, yeah, I will. I haven't been on yet. And they're like, hey, dude, your bill's due on the 23rd. And I was like, okay, well, in the next 10 days, I'll update it. That was this morning. And I was like, I guess I need to update this shit, right? So I thought it was like the 13th or 14th, but kind of find out we're at the end of the month, so or close to the end of the month. So yeah, man, I've lost track of time in the last month or so. So, well, man, I will see you on Twitter. If you could, real quick, man, tell the two or three listeners that we have how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, so Twitter's definitely the best option. My DMs are open. Send me. I've been responding to all of them. So if you have an Ironman question, you have a question on mindset, or just where to get started with building yourself up and potentially just reestablishing that purpose, hit me up on there at Chris Boettcher 9, and love to connect and just trying to build as many relationships with like-minded people as possible. So. But Boyd, I definitely appreciate you having me on, man, and I love the direction of this friendship, and can't wait to continue to build with you, brother.
All right, my man. Chris, you take care, brother.
You too, buddy.
All
We'll catch
right.
up soon, man.
All right. Thank you, sir.